Hello, this is Shannon with Modern Traditional Quilts coming with you with another quilt block tutorial. Today we're doing a diamond in a diamond. And this block is sometimes called the wagon wheel. This quilt is part of the 9 square quilt along. You can see I have laid out my half square triangles into this fun diamond shape. I'm using the Rosemary Cottage collection, and I chose to sort my fabrics in different colors, so each block would kind of have would be matching, but it'd have different colors. This one I decided to go with the beige colors. Kind of fun to see that. So here we've got it zoomed in. You can see the colorways. I've mapped them out. You can do this any way you want to, but this is how I like it. All right, so you've seen this before. If you've been following with this before, this is episode number 7. We're doing number 4 on our block diagram. It's up here, well, in the upper right-hand corner, and we've got an example of it already quilted. And of course, in this one, of course, we're holding the quilt upside down, so it's in the bottom left-hand corner. But it's kind of fun to see the block. That one's a scrappy setting. Today we're doing all beige. So we're looking at this one. Here's a picture of it scrappy. Here's a picture of it done in different colorways, and so it's fun to see how different color schemes. So, trick, you want to lay out your diamond in a diamond block. We have 2 vision types. Rods are black and white, cone C in color. When you're laying out your fabric placement, you want to squint and see how heavy fabric lies. If some fabrics stand out too much, move it, switch it around. If some is not speaking to you loud enough, you might put it in a different place. But this gets you a nice color placement and gets you some fun colors. Alright, so first thing we're doing piecing, we want to do this traditional. So we're going to sew this in columns 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to go vertically down, and we do that so that help us with our ironing later on. Alright, so I'm going to take row 1, row 2, and I'm just going to chain piece these. I'm not even going to stop and cut them. And I do that, it makes it kind of so it pins the next row, which makes it super, super nice. Okay, so I want to show you I have columns 1 sewn to column 2. Next I'm going to lay column 3 on top and sew down this line. Again, I'm going to sew 4 together without stopping or cutting the threads. Alright, so I wanted to show you that I have columns 1, 2, and 3 sewn together. And now I'm going to add column 4. Same thing. I'm going to flip the half square triangle on top of it. Sew down this line without cutting any threads. And you'll see if you do that, you keep your orientation straight and you actually don't have any problems with the squares and triangles flipping into the wrong direction, and it actually automatically pins these cross lines for you, which is super useful. Alright, so we've finished sewing all of our columns together. I know I rotated this 90 degrees so it'd be easier to see. But if you look, we still have our same orientation, all of our blocks are in the same spot, and it'll be really easy to go ahead and sew the other seams. If you look, because the thread is still attached, we'll be able to fold it right in half and we'll be able to sew those other seams. Now, some of the things that happen when you start getting more of these blocks a little bit more advanced, you want to pay attention to what direction your seams are getting pressed. Like right here, we're going to have a lot of seams. So I want to take a minute and show you a diagram of how I prefer to press the seams in this block. Alright, so let's look at these nested seams, okay? We want them to nest. So that means that they line up exactly together and they lay flat. And your long arm quilter will really appreciate if you do it this way. I know that when I'm long arm quilting, especially if it's edge to edge, one bulky big bump, you can either pop a needle or it can bump off your edge to edge pattern. So I prefer to make sure that I've pressed everything correctly. So a nested seam has seams in rows going the opposite directions to reduce bulk. when I'm doing this particular block, I start in the center diamond because I want it to look like a diamond. And if you look, these two I did to the left and the other one I did to the right. And that's because this seam right here is going to produce a lot of bulk. If they all went the exact same direction, that might be interesting. You can do it and do it all the exact same directions. That's what we did with our beginning seesaw blocks, which worked, and then did the opposite row in the opposite direction. But for me, I want to do this way. So if I go ahead and press my seams opposite direction from one another as their blue arrows are shown, then I want to use the opposite direction for those when I have the green as shown in the yellow arrow. So make sure that they go opposite directions. So in this first one I have two seams going the right and the other one going to left. And that means that my other row, the next one above it, needs to go one to the right and two to the left. And so you can play with it and see what I'm talking about, but that's going to make it so all three rows nest appropriately. My tip is don't clip the threads between your columns. You see I pinned mine on the ironing board, but if you keep them, you don't actually have to pin it. So that's a really cool trick. Another tip for you is what I call X marks the spot. This block does have an X in it. I actually sewed this particular block this time around with blue thread so you can see the X. The X marks the spot. If you watch that and make sure your needle goes right in at the very, very tip of that X, you won't have any blunted points in your block. It will all look together flawless. And that's one of the biggest tricks that I call it a grandma trick. Maybe it's something that your grandma would show you but is never written in a quilt pattern. So you want to look at this, make sure we have X marks the spots, make sure our seams can nest. And then when I'm going to sew it, I like to start in the middle, then work my way out. And I do that with large patterns too. And so for this block, I'm going to start in the middle, fold it in half. I don't really have to pin everything because I didn't cut my threads, and sew out. And when I do this, I'm going to watch for my X marks the spot. You can see that really. Let me see if I can make this bigger for a second. Right here. Here's my X marks the spot. My seams are going to nest opposite one another. See how those two line up and will be really thick? I'm going to put the needle right in that point and you won't blunt anything. I just like to lift my presser foot once in a while. Check that X marks the spot, make sure that my seams are pressing opposite each other. They should be, and everything should be nesting, but just in case you can kind of feel it with your hands. Sometimes my feed dogs take the bottom one and flip it up even though it shouldn't. I have been asked, why don't you just press the seams open like you would in a dress or a clothing? And the reason why you don't in quilts is that when you put on that quilt frame, there's going to be some pressure on here when you go to quilt it, especially if you're on a machine quilting frame. And you don't want these seams to pop open. If they pop open, then you've got a hole inside of your quilt, especially over time. And I've had some antique quilts do that for a long time from, grandparents and great grandmothers and things like that. So for me, I press my seams towards the dark and then flip them to the areas of lace bulk. So again, here I've got another X marks the spot seam, and it's aligning up with a flat seam, and I'm making sure that they both wedge in opposite directions for that next row. Okay, I finished sewing my last row. Our quilt block is together, sewn, all of our pieces work together, and I'm going to need to go back to it and go ahead and press things open. Press the seams on it that I just sewed. Whoa! And here's our block, all pressed, nice and flat. Look at the seams, they're going opposite directions of one another, and everything's going to be able to lay really, really flat when we put it into our final quilt and put it on for the long armor. So, or if you're going to quilt by hand, good for you. A few other things about this particular quilt pattern, quilt block, that I thought would be interesting. You can actually use this to make a whole new quilt. This is sometimes called a wagon wheel quilt. It's also called a diamond and diamond. There's so many quilt blocks, so many quilt ideas, and so many to sew that you just never run out of time. You have to be picky and choosy. So you can take this block, repeat it, and I have the diagram up there for 4 of them. You can see kind of a tesseract kind of puzzle. They can begin to repeat and past one another, and so it makes a new quilt pattern, the wagon wheel, which is a really fun one. So many quilts, so many time, right? And so I hope you enjoyed this project, and we'll see you later.